the stranger on the train. There's a train. It is late at night. The carriage is almost empty. You are sitting by the window, watching the darkness go past. Your reflection looks back at you from the glass. You are tired. You have had a long day. The kind of day that sits heavy on your shoulders. And then someone sits down across from you. A stranger. You have never seen this person before. They look at you and they smile. And then they say something in English. And in that moment, everything changes. This is not just a story about a train. This is a story about you. About the moment you discover something you did not know was possible. About the conversation that changes the direction of your life. Stay with me, because by the end of this speech, you will understand something about yourself that you have never understood before. Let me tell you about a woman named Clara. She was 34 years old. She was traveling alone on a night train from one city to another. She had a long journey ahead of her. Several hours through the dark countryside. She had a book in her bag, but she did not feel like reading. She had her phone, but the battery was low. So she just sat and looked out of the window. And then a man sat down across from her. He was older, maybe 60. He had kind eyes and a small bag, and an air of someone who was very comfortable with himself. He looked at her and said, in English, "Long journey tonight." Clara understood him, but she did not answer. She pretended she had not heard. She looked back at the window. The man nodded quietly and looked at his own hands. And that was that. No conversation. No connection. Just two people sitting in silence for several hours until Clara's stop came and she got off the train and walked into the night. Clara told me this story years later. She told me it was one of her greatest regrets. Not because of what could have happened romantically or professionally or practically, but because of what she had done to herself in that moment. She had heard the man speak, and her whole body had filled with fear, not because he was frightening, but because she was afraid of her own English. She was afraid of opening her mouth and sounding wrong. She was afraid of the pause that might come when she searched for a word. She was afraid that the man would see through her English to the truth she believed about herself. The truth she had carried for years. The truth that said she was not good enough. She was not smart enough. She was not fluent enough to deserve a real conversation with a real person. So she looked away. And the train moved through the dark. And the chance passed. And Clara sat with the weight of it for a very long time. I am telling you about Clara because her story lives inside millions of English learners all over the world. The silent moment, the looked away moment, the moment when the English was there, waiting, and fear arrived first. You know this moment. You have had versions of it. Maybe not on a train. Maybe in a classroom when the teacher asked a question and you knew the answer but kept your hand down. Maybe in a shop when you needed to ask something but walked out without asking. Maybe in a meeting when you had an idea but said nothing. Maybe on the phone when you let it ring out rather than answer. These are all the same moment. The moment when fear speaks louder than you. The moment when you choose silence over the risk of being heard. But here is what I want you to understand. That moment does not have to define you. Clara made a choice on that train, and for years she believed that choice revealed something true about her, something permanent, but it did not. It only revealed where she was at that moment in her journey, and journeys move forward. Clara's story did not end on that train, and yours does not end at your silent moment either. Let me tell you what happened to Clara next. 3 years after the train, she was on another journey. This time it was a bus, daytime, busy. She was sitting next to a young woman who was struggling with a map. The young woman was clearly lost, and she was clearly English speaking. Clara watched her for a moment, and something happened inside Clara that had never quite happened before. A decision arrived, not a slow, considered, careful decision. A fast one, an instinctive one. Clara leaned over and said in English, "Can I help you find something?" The young woman looked up with enormous relief. She explained where she was trying to go. Clara helped her. The conversation lasted 4 minutes. It was not perfect. Clara made 2 grammatical errors that she noticed immediately. She mispronounced one word. She had to pause twice to find the right phrase. But she did it. She spoke. She helped. And when the young woman got off at her stop and turned back to wave, something happened in Clara's chest. Something broke open. Something that had been locked for a very long time. Clara told me that 4-minute conversation changed her more than years of study had. Not because her English suddenly became fluent. It did not. But because she proved something to herself that evening that no textbook could ever prove. She proved that her English was real. It was usable. It could connect her to another human being. It could be useful in the world. It was not perfect, but it was enough. And enough, she understood that evening, was everything. Now I want to ask you something directly. What is your train story? What is the moment you stayed silent when you wanted to speak? What is the bus moment that is still waiting for you? Because I believe that moment is coming. I believe it is closer than you think, and I want to help you be ready for it. Not with more grammar rules, not with more vocabulary lists, but with something more important. I want to help you be ready with the right understanding of what you are actually doing when you learn English. Because most people have it wrong. Most people think learning English is about reaching a level of perfection. It is not. Learning English is about building a bridge. And the bridge does not have to be perfect before you can walk across it. It just has to be strong enough to hold you. Think about a bridge being built across a river. When the construction workers first begin, there is nothing across the water, just 2 banks with a gap between them. Then the first beam goes up. The first cable is strung. The first concrete is poured. The bridge does not look like much yet. It would be absurd to try to drive a car across it. But could a person walk carefully across the first basic structure? Maybe. With care, with attention. Slowly. That is where you are right now. Your bridge is being built. It is not finished, but you can already begin to cross it. Carefully, slowly, with attention. And every time you walk across that unfinished bridge, you make it stronger. Every conversation strengthens it. Every word you use in a real situation adds a beam. Every brave moment adds a cable. The bridge builds itself by being used. I want to tell you about a man named Andrei. He was an engineer. He came from a country where English was not commonly spoken. He was brilliant in his field. He could solve problems that other engineers could not. He could look at a structure and see exactly where the weakness was. He had a gift for it. And then his company sent him to work on an international project. Suddenly, he was in meetings with people from 6 different countries, all speaking English. Fast English, technical English, English full of idioms and abbreviations and professional jargon he had never encountered in any classroom. The first meeting, Andrei sat in silence for 2 hours. He understood perhaps 40% of what was said. He nodded when others nodded. He wrote in his notebook constantly so that people would think he was engaged. He was terrified. He was a senior engineer, a respected professional, and he felt like a child sitting at an adult table. That evening, he called his wife. He told her he did not think he could do it. He told her his English was not good enough for this level. His wife listened. And then she said something very simple. She said, "Andrei, you are the best engineer in that room. You know things those people do not know. The language is just the packaging. Your knowledge is the gift inside. Do not let bad packaging hide a great gift." Andrei stayed on the phone for a long time after she said that. He thought about it. Bad packaging hiding a great gift. He had never thought about his language that way before. He had always thought of his limited English as evidence that he was less than the other people in the room. But what if it was not evidence of less? What if it was just temporary packaging? Packaging that could be improved while the gift inside remained exactly what it was. The next day, Andrei did something different. He arrived early to the meeting. He introduced himself to 3 people before it began. His English was slow. He searched for words. He had to ask people to repeat themselves. But he did it, and something interesting happened. The people he spoke to were warm. They were engaged. They were curious about him, not because his English was impressive, but because his ideas were impressive. Because when he finally spoke in the meeting, when he finally said the words he had been holding back, the room went quiet. Because what he said was right, and everyone in that room knew it. Language is packaging, but the world runs on what is inside. You have a gift inside you. I know this because you are here. I know this because you are choosing in this moment to invest in your English. People who have nothing to say do not work this hard to find a way to say it. The very fact that you want to communicate so badly is evidence that you have something worth communicating. The very fact that you feel frustrated by the gap between what you know and what you can express is evidence that the knowing is there. The rich interior is there. The English is just the door you are building, and the door is being built. Every single day, it is being built. Let me talk to you now about something that almost nobody tells English learners. Something important about the way native speakers actually experience your English. Because I think you have a very specific picture in your mind of what native speakers think when they hear you speak. And I think that picture is wrong. In your picture, the native speaker is noticing every mistake. In your picture, they are mentally correcting your grammar. In your picture, they are slightly impatient, slightly amused, slightly judgmental. Am I right? I think I am. Because that is the picture that most English learners carry, and it is almost completely inaccurate. Here is what actually happens when a native English speaker listens to someone who is learning English. First, they notice almost none of the grammatical mistakes. Truly, unless the mistake creates confusion, they do not even register it. Their brain is processing meaning, not structure. They are trying to understand what you are saying, not analyze how you are saying it. Second, if your meaning is unclear, they help. They ask questions. They suggest words. They are collaborative. Language is communication, and communication is a joint effort. Native speakers know this instinctively. Third, and this is the most important thing, they are usually genuinely impressed because they know, on some level, that speaking a second language is hard, and most of them can only speak one. Think about this honestly. When you hear someone speaking your language as a foreign language, with an accent, with some mistakes, with occasional pauses, what do you feel? Do you feel contempt? Do you feel impatience? Or do you feel a kind of warmth, a kind of respect, a kind of admiration for the effort? I think you feel the warmth. I think you feel the respect, because that is the human response to effort. We are wired to admire people who try difficult things, and learning a language is a very difficult thing. You are doing a very difficult thing. Be proud of that. Now I want to go back to the train, because there is more to this story. There is a second stranger, and this stranger is you. You are also a stranger on a train, not just Clara's train, your own train, the train of your English journey. And on this train, you have been traveling for some time. You got on at one station. You are heading to another. And along the way, there are stops. There are other passengers who get on and off. There are tunnels where everything goes dark, and you cannot see anything, and you wonder if the train is still moving. There are moments of bright, open countryside where suddenly you can see for miles, and everything feels possible. And there are long, ordinary stretches of track where nothing seems to be happening, and you just sit and wait and hope. This is your journey, and right now, wherever you are on it, you are moving. Even in the tunnels, you are moving. Even in the ordinary stretches, you are moving. The train does not stop because you cannot see out the window. The train does not stop because you are tired. The train does not stop because you made a mistake or had a bad lesson or felt confused or wanted to give up. The train is moving. You are moving. Forward, always forward, even when it does not feel like it. I want to tell you about the tunnels specifically, because the tunnels are the hardest part. In language learning, the tunnels are the plateaus, the periods when nothing seems to improve. You study and study, and you do not feel better. You practice and practice, and you do not feel more fluent. You listen and read and speak, and the progress feels invisible. You feel stuck. You feel like maybe you have hit a wall, and the tunnel stretches on, and you cannot see the light at the end of it. I know these tunnels well. Everyone who has ever learned a language knows them. Here is what is actually happening in the tunnel. Your brain is working on something that is too deep to see on the surface. Language learning happens in layers. The surface layer is what you can consciously observe. The new word you learned today, the grammar rule you practiced this morning. These are visible. You can point to them. But underneath the surface, there is a much larger layer of work happening that you cannot see at all. Your brain is connecting things. It is finding patterns. It is building automatic responses. It is creating the neural pathways that will one day allow you to speak without thinking. This is deep work. It is invisible work. And it only happens during the periods when nothing seems to be happening on the surface. The plateau is not a pause in your progress. The plateau is where the deep progress happens. The plateau is where you are becoming fluent. You just cannot see it yet. And then one day you exit the tunnel. One day you say a sentence in English and you realize you did not think about it before you said it. It just came. One day you hear something in English and you realize you understood it before your brain had time to translate it. One day you laugh at a joke in English before you have time to process why it is funny. These moments are the end of the tunnel, and they are extraordinary. They feel like magic, but they are not magic. They are the result of all that invisible work that happened underground. They are the harvest of the tunnel. You sow in the tunnel, and you reap in the light. But you must stay on the train through the tunnel to reach the light. Let me tell you about a young woman named Yuki. She was Japanese. She had been learning English for 4 years. Her reading was strong. Her listening was reasonable. But her speaking paralyzed her. Every time she tried to speak, she froze. Her mind went blank. All the English she had studied seemed to disappear. She described it as trying to reach for something on a shelf and finding the shelf empty. She knew the words existed. She had studied them, but in the moment of needing them, they were gone. This is one of the most common and most frustrating experiences in language learning, and it has a name. Language teachers call it communication apprehension, but you probably have a simpler name for it. You probably call it panic. Yuki found a technique that changed everything for her, and I want to share it with you because it is simple and it works. She started talking to herself in English, not in lessons, not in formal practice, just in her daily life. When she was cooking dinner, she narrated what she was doing in English. She said, "Now I am cutting the vegetables. I am adding the oil to the pan. The oil is heating." She went to the supermarket and described the products to herself in English as she walked through the aisles. "This is a can of tomatoes. This is a type of cheese I have never tried before. It looks interesting." She lay in bed at night and described her day in English. "This morning I woke up early. The weather was cold. I wore my blue coat." It sounds almost too simple, but here is why it works. It builds a habit of thinking in English without pressure. There is no audience. There are no consequences. There is no one to impress or disappoint. Just you and the language, moving together easily and naturally. And over weeks of this quiet, private practice, something remarkable happens. The shelf fills up. The words are there when you reach for them, because you have been reaching for them every day in private, with no stakes. And now when the stakes arrive, when you are on the train and a stranger says something, your hand goes to the shelf and finds what it needs. Practice in private creates confidence in public. Always. want to speak about something deeper, something below the language itself. I want to talk about identity, because I believe the real reason many people struggle with English is not about grammar or vocabulary or pronunciation. It is about identity. It is about who you believe yourself to be, and whether that person has permission to speak English. Here is what I mean. Your identity is the story you tell yourself about yourself. I'm a person who is good at this. I'm a person who is bad at that. I am a person who belongs here. I am a person who does not belong there. These stories feel like facts, but they are not facts. They are just stories, and stories can be changed. When you try to speak English and you struggle, your identity story might say, "See, this proves it. English is not for people like me. I am not the kind of person who speaks English well. This story is not true, but it feels true. And when it feels true, it stops you. It puts a wall up, not a real wall, but a story wall. And story walls are actually harder to break through than real walls, because real walls, you can see them. Story walls are invisible. The most transformative thing you can do for your English is to change the story. Not to pretend you are fluent when you are not. Not to ignore the real work that still needs to be done, but to tell yourself a different true story. Instead of, "I am not good at English," try, "I am someone who is learning English and making real progress." Instead of, "English is not for people like me," try, "English is being learned right now by millions of people just like me." Instead of, "I will never be fluent," try, "I do not know yet how good my English will become, but I know it is getting better." These are not false stories. These are truer stories, because they include the possibility of growth. And you are a growing person. I want to tell you about Marcus. He grew up in a country where English was associated with power and privilege. English was the language of the educated class, the wealthy class, the class that his family did not belong to. So for years, Marcus believed that English was not his language, not because he could not learn it, but because it did not feel like it belonged to him, like a beautiful house in a neighborhood where he did not live. He could admire it from the outside, but he did not feel like he had the right to walk through the front door. Then something happened. Marcus got a job working with an international organization, and he was surrounded by English every day. And he noticed something that surprised him. The English that these international people spoke was not perfect. It was accented. It was varied. It was alive with different pronunciations and different rhythms and different ways of constructing sentences. Some of them made grammatical mistakes that Marcus knew were mistakes. Some of them had vocabularies much smaller than his, and yet they spoke freely, comfortably, without shame, without apology. Marcus realized something that day that changed him. English does not belong to any one group of people. It does not belong to the wealthy or the educated or the native speakers or the privileged. English belongs to whoever uses it, and using it is enough. You do not need permission. You do not need to be from a certain place or a certain background or a certain class. You just need to open your mouth and try. That is the only requirement. Marcus opened his mouth, and English came in, not perfectly at first, but it came, and it has been his ever since. English is yours if you want it. It belongs to you as much as it belongs to anyone. The language does not know where you grew up. It does not know what your parents did for work. It does not know what your accent sounds like, or how long you have been studying, or how many mistakes you have made. The language does not judge. People judge. But the language itself is open to everyone. Walk through the door. It has been unlocked for you the whole time. I want to talk about patience now. Real patience. Not the kind of patience that just means waiting, but the kind of patience that is active and alive and full of trust. The kind of patience that a farmer has. A farmer does not plant seeds and then dig them up the next day to see if they are growing. A farmer plants seeds and then trusts the process. The farmer tends the soil. The farmer waters when needed. The farmer removes the weeds. But the farmer does not hurry the seeds. The farmer knows that hurrying does nothing. That seeds grow on their own timeline, and that the only job is to create the right conditions and then trust the ground. You are that farmer. Your English lessons are the seeds. Your daily practice is the watering. Your patience is what holds it all together. And the harvest is coming. It is always coming for people who tend their seeds. The question is never whether the seeds will grow. Seeds grow. That is what they do. The question is only whether you will stay long enough to see it happen. Stay. Stay in the field. Keep watering. Trust the ground. The harvest is coming. Think about something you are already good at. Anything. Cooking, driving, a sport, a musical instrument, a craft, a skill that now feels natural and automatic. Think about the first time you tried to do that thing. Remember how awkward it felt. Remember how conscious you were of every movement. Remember how you had to think about each step separately. Remember how exhausted you were just from the concentration. And now look at where you are with that skill today. You do it without thinking. Your hands know what to do. Your body knows what to do. The knowledge lives in your muscles. How did it get there? Not by talent, by repetition, by practice, by doing the thing badly many times until one day you were doing it less badly, and then doing it adequately, and then doing it well, and then doing it automatically. English is exactly the same process. You are in the awkward phase, the phase where you have to think about each step, the phase where it is exhausting just to have a conversation, the phase where nothing is automatic yet. But this phase is not a permanent condition. It is a stage, and stages move. They always move forward if you keep showing up, if you keep practicing, if you keep saying the words out loud even when they feel wrong. The automatic phase is coming. It always comes for people who do the work. Now I want to come back to the train one more time, because the story is not finished. Remember Clara on the night train, the woman who looked away from the stranger, the woman who spent years carrying the weight of that silence. I want to tell you what Clara told me when I last spoke to her. She said that she eventually understood something about that night that changed how she felt about it. She said she finally understood that the stranger on the train that night was not the old man with kind eyes. The stranger on the train was her own English. Her English was new and unfamiliar, and she did not recognize it as hers. It felt foreign. It felt like it belonged to someone else, like something she could look at, but not touch, not own. And so she turned away from it. But you cannot turn away from your own language forever. Eventually, it catches up with you. Eventually, it sits down across from you again. And when it does, you have a choice. You can look away again, or you can look at it, really look at it, see it for what it is. Not a test, not a judgment, just a possibility, just an invitation to connect, just a voice waiting for another voice to answer it. Your English is not a stranger, not anymore. You have been living with it, learning it, struggling with it, growing with it. It is becoming yours. Sentence by sentence, word by word, brave moment by brave moment, it is becoming yours. And one day, not a distant, theoretical one day, but a real, specific, actual day that is coming closer every time you practice. One day you will be on a train, or a bus, or in a shop, or at a meeting, or on a phone call, and someone will say something in English, and you will answer, without thinking, without freezing, without looking away. You will just answer, naturally, like the most normal thing in the world, because by then it will be. I want to leave you with something, a picture to carry with you when the learning feels hard, and the tunnel is dark, and the plateau stretches on, and the shelf feels empty, and the voice in your head says it is not worth it. I want you to picture a train at night. You are on it. You are moving through the dark. You cannot see where you are going. But the train is moving. You are always moving. And somewhere ahead, in a lit carriage on that same train, someone is sitting with kind eyes and a small bag and an air of great comfort with themselves. And they are going to say something to you. And this time, you are going to answer. This time you are going to lean forward. You are going to smile back. You are going to open your mouth. You are going to say something in English. Maybe it will be perfect. Probably it will not be, but it will be real, and it will be yours, and it will travel across the small space between two strangers on a night train, and it will land, and something will connect. And that connection, that tiny, imperfect, real human connection made possible by your English, will be worth every lesson, every mistake, every silent moment, every tunnel, every plateau, every Tuesday night, and every early morning, and every confused afternoon, and every moment you wanted to stop and chose to continue instead. That moment on the train is what you are working towards. That moment is already inside you, waiting. You are building towards it every single day. You are closer to it today than you were yesterday. You will be closer tomorrow than you are today. The train is moving. You are on it. The stranger is waiting. Go and meet them.